thank you for being here this morning, Joe, and thank you to DeVry Works for being a sponsor of not just this week and helping to make this happen, but a longtime sponsor of the work that we do at Chief Learning Officers. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. We love the venue. We love the personality. We love the mission. We feel we're very tied to your mission as well.
So let's talk a little bit about the mission, about your work. So DeVry Works, a division of DeVry University, which a lot of folks may be familiar with DeVry University, but you're a little bit different from the traditional DeVry University. So tell us a little bit about it.
So maybe I'll start with DeVry University. I think a lot of people are very familiar with the name DeVry University. When we started 85 years ago, it was actually a trade school. And a lot of people still have that misconception, but several decades ago now, we actually became a fully accredited four-year university. Though we have a more limited number of degrees. We focus on what we consider career-based degrees, where people are most likely to have employment as soon as they get out. So that tends to be technology, business, or management. The other thing about DeVry University, people may have a misconception on it. A lot of people know us as an online school, and that's absolutely the case. We were a pioneer on online learning. But today, still over 50% of our students take classes on site. And I think that's valuable for many of the folks in the audience because a lot of our partners, we leverage our campuses, whether it be the technology, the professors, or just the environment to work jointly with in building programs for our partners. And we have 50 campuses across the United States. So as I like to tell our partners, wherever you're located, there's a campus down the street from you. And so that's DeVry University. DeVry Works, as you mentioned, that's a business group within the university. And the focus there is to create business partnerships and military partnerships. And we'd like to go to market and say where a lot of universities, I think, are focused on enrollments, and I can understand why. Our focus is to say, what are the business problems that exist in the business world that we could actually have an impact on? And for those mostly the way I frame those up is, the business issues are things like retention or hiring the right people or maybe development of high potential individuals. And so that's where we like to focus in building our relationships.
Yeah, so it's sort of bridging that gap that we're always talking about, the school to work divide and helping to kind of bring those two together is essentially the mission.
And doing it from a business perspective versus a traditional academic perspective.
Yeah, and building on that idea, your background, you're not necessarily coming from a traditional academic background and you're working for a division of a university. So tell us a little bit about your journey to be where you are now working for.
Sure. To your point, my background is predominantly sales management and general management. I've been very fortunate to be in now 4 different industries. Started off in telecom, then I was in technology, and then I was in big data before it became highly fashionable, but it was big data, and now I'm in academia. And I've always been involved in academia, right? So whether it be education, I had some additional degrees, I love the campus environment, I do some adjunct professor teaching, but I never envisioned that I would be on the business side of academia. And part of it is, I don't want to soapbox, but I look at my alma maters, which are pretty well known, and the way that their money was spent on things like, my student union, where the furniture is better than what I have in my own house, constantly watching tuition costs go up. I just felt there was never going to be a match for me. And when I got introduced to DeVry University, a couple things came out. One was, like most universities, if not all universities, there was a tremendous focus on the student, and so that resonated for me from a mission standpoint. The other piece was that they had this financial acumen that they brought to the business of running a university, and so they're not pumping money into things that I consider to be less academia-focused and more socially focused. And so I tell everybody of all the sales jobs I've ever had, because my work is predominantly sales, it's the best one. And yesterday we heard somebody from the gaming industry saying, hey, I'm not in the gaming industry, I'm in the WoW business. And I thought that's pretty cool because the way I've always described my job is I'm not in education, I actually get to change people's lives. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, you talked a little bit about the investments that universities are making and kind of what attracted you to work for DeVry Works, and really honing in on the business aspects of it, because you're an investor in higher education yourself right now, personally, right? You got
I am.
Three kids
three
kids in college?
I'm glad you call it investment. Doesn't always feel that way, but yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of money leaving the Mozden household into higher education.
Exactly. Yeah. 1 out of 3, it's got to pay off. One will take care of Dad, right?
Hey, those are good odds in Vegas.
I know they all take care of their mother, my wife, but I'm not sure if they all take care of Dad, so I'm thinking 1 out of 3.
All right, so let's see. You guys at DeVry Works have been doing some work around the future of employee development and have started to sort of crystallize this idea that you're calling talent activation. So maybe tell us a little bit about what is talent activation and why is it important for us to have a conversation about it?
Absolutely. So the genesis of this is really two things. One is back to the strategy of DeVry Works, which is we want to be involved not in driving enrollments. Yes, I want to drive enrollments. I don't want to say don't, but we want to be involved in solving business issues. And then the second was the macroeconomics of 3% unemployment. And so we were looking at that and saying, well, what does that mean for the future of L&D, for talent development, things of that nature? And so we started doing research, and we came up with this process now that we're working on with many other institutions called talent activation. And talent activation is about corporations designing and then prescribing a very tied together series of experiences for employees for their entire employee life cycle. So it's not about a one and done that they're trying to solve a particular thing. They're looking at it and they're saying from the time somebody is hired and then they're developing and then they leave the company, what are the unique experiences along the way that we will use to help them become engaged, to become productive, and ultimately there's science behind this about the loyalty that builds out. And so the other part of the science in there is that there are actually these innate skills or emotions that people have in their journey, like anything you do, whether it be education, work, or a sport, where you can be more activated at different parts of that life cycle. As for instance, when a new employee is on board, they have a tremendous amount of creativity. They're unencumbered by the restraints. What a great time for one of those experiences to be focused on, letting them just open up and thinking what could be the world. So the difference here from what's been done traditionally is this is all focused on what people are doing and not how they're feeling. So the idea is, there's research that says 40% of the people feel checked out at work. You're not going to be able to connect to them per se, but that doesn't mean they can't be productive. So how do you create an experience for somebody who feels partially checked out at work where that experience develops them, allows them to be productive, and actually may then overcome them being checked out?
Right. So this talent activation idea is looking at where the individual particularly is within their career life cycle and sort of tapping into that.
Exactly.
You gave an example of the onboarding as for new employees, kind of where they're at. Can you maybe give an example of somebody who's in the latter stages of their career and what that looks like for them? How might that development experience be different from the work that you guys are doing?
Sure. So one of our clients that we're working on this talent activation, one of the things they did to actually combine both that, somebody who's in their later part of their career, and the onboarding piece was a mentorship program. So again, not directly tied to education per se, but definitely tied to the business solution we're going after, talent activation. And they created mentoring programs because at that point in somebody's career, the desire to give back after a positive employment experience is very rich and very high. So you're tapping into that skill or that innate desire, and then you're actually, in this case, covering sort of two parts of the life cycle.
Mm-hmm. So let's hone in, if we can sort of narrow it down. So I'd like to hone in on the L&D aspect of it, because you just brought up the whole talent life cycle brings in a lot of different pieces of how we manage people, how talent is managed in organizations. For folks who are, perhaps living more in the L&D world than they are in some of these other areas of talent, whether that's onboarding or whether that's, recruitment and compensation and all those different pieces of it. What does the talent activation work that you're doing show for L&D folks that maybe they need to consider doing differently, better, more of, less of?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question, and it's early morning, but I'll be a bit provocative if I may. First of all, I think what L&D is doing is very beneficial and it's on target. But I think if I were to be sitting in that seat saying, what am I going to do different, the thing I would ask you to walk away with is, hey, I think we need to move from, it's an L&D issue, which you just talked about. When I think of talent activation, that's a whole integration issue. That is, if you think about it, when somebody's being onboarded, that's talent acquisition. When they're being developed in the right part of their career, that's L&D. And then when they're being maybe in their later part of their career, they're more focused on benefits. So we're talking about, when you think of the HR spectrum, we're talking about the entire spectrum that needs to be considered. And I think it's that integration, and I would even suggest that coupled with outside resources, because now we're talking about many different aspects all in one strategy to develop and activate that employee base.
Yeah. So from a traditional L&D perspective, if we are focused on that, how do we start to look beyond that? I mean, where start, I guess, is the question for you. Where would you recommend that L&D folks were saying, okay, Joe, I get the fact that I need to be thinking a little bit more expansively about our programs. I need to be looking about how we tie into where people are in their career life cycle, some of the other things we're doing around the organization. Do you have advice on where they should start when they're considering going on that journey to talent activation?
So I have two parts to that. One, I won't go into depth. One is, would love to talk to anybody. If they're going down that path, how do you actually tactically execute it? There's 2 or 3 things that I think are very important to be thinking about that I would love to sidebar. But at a high level, it's building a budget, and we have a very specific approach on how you can actually create a true ROI budget. Executive sponsorship, which I'm not only talking about, but I think we've heard everybody talk about over the last day and a half. So that's sort of the execution piece. What I encourage people to do is talent activation is on the front end. Right? This is the early phase of it, and there is no predefined path that for everyone. And so what I encourage people to do is partner. I would love to partner with many people, but there are many people in this space, and I would tell you that if you can find somebody, a partner, whether it's another university, another corporation, or it is a university, or it's a training partner, but if they have the ability to, A, understand your culture and how your corporation learns, and B, if they can put together not a training module, again, that's a discrete item, but if they can put in a career or learning pathway which goes across the spectrum, that's the way they think, I think they would be a great partner for you and for you to start to engage with.
All right. So we just got a couple minutes left here, but maybe you can help us wrap it up by kind of giving us the big picture of what this means. I mean, what's at risk if we don't go down this path? And maybe at the same time, to flip it a little bit, what do you see as the great opportunities that are there? So the risk and opportunity here.
The risk and opportunity. Okay, so let's do a glass is half full, glass is half empty.
Right.
So the engineer in me is going to start with the glass is half empty. I think the reason a lot of this conversation, like if we're honest and we look in the mirror, the reason a lot of this conversation is taking place right now around talent in particular, I think the reason a lot of, quite honestly, the careers that are here are in place today is because we have the benefit of 3% unemployment. And I think if that was not the case, it'd be substantially different. So that's the pessimist side, not the pessimist.
There's just not the talent out there. The talent
Correct.
is not out there in order to carry out. You can't hire, you can't find all these people that you're going to need for future growth. You've got to really build them from inside. Yeah.
That piece, and then I think at a corporate level, corporations are willing to invest in all of us because they realize they have that problem. Yeah. If unemployment was 10%, I think it'd be a different picture.
Yeah.
So that's the glass is half full. But I'm an optimist, and so what I would say is, what an outstanding opportunity for us, right? So we have the wind in our sails. We have 3% unemployment. That means corporations see strategic value in what we're doing. That means the concepts of investing in talent activation, which is not about going and hiring outside, but developing internally, are very, very rich and on top of mind. So I think there's this great opportunity for us right now, while we have this macroeconomic background, to align our business needs with our talent needs and create, career pathing or career learning that will be sustainable, that will have impact now. Actually, I truly believe creates competitive advantage and will have sustainability into the next macroeconomic environment, which probably will not be as favorable.
Yeah.
So I think the opportunity is now, and I think that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you once again, Joe, for taking time to join us on stage, and DeVry Works for making this happen.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you very much. Cheers.